This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Kyrie Irving discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Still trying to adjust to this new normal, but until we actually start seeing basketball played, man, nothing is ever going to feel or be the same. But we're going to do our best to make sure that you ease on in to this anticipated announcement of whether or not the NBA is going to be full steam ahead in about a month's time frame. And we may have a guest who might offer you just a speck of encouragement. But let me not, shimmy with the details, man. Let me go ahead and roll out the red carpet to my right-hand man, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC. My man, Mr. Warren Shaw, ripping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holla back at me, Mr. Shaw. I know you're cringing at the thought that we may be on the cusp of possibly having an NBA season, but is it really real?
It's not really real until, they roll the balls out and it's July 30th and things are going and getting down. But
I thought it was when there would be a bubble, when they're giving you a Goodyear blimp shot of the bubble.
No. Well, there's trouble with the bubble, as they say, man. So we'll see how that all works out. More than just them returning to play, it's just a lot to manage here. But as you alluded to, man, we have a great guest, a great show to discuss and help us break down this topic. I'm excited as always. So salute to all the fans listening to the Baseline. As always, I hope you're staying safe out there and and making it through all the things that are happening in our world today.
Absolutely. And listen, this is a premier writer. He covers the NBA. He is an NBA junkie. No, literally, he is an NBA junkie, and he will tell you so. But we have our man, Sam Amico of AmicoHoops.net. He's also a premier writer for SI.com. He'll be on in a moment or so to help us talk about a bevy of subjects that is related to the recent decision about the NBA's intention to move forward with the remainder of the NBA season in July. So we cannot wait to get him on board and wrap with us and to give you guys insight, of what he knows and where we all are with what may be possibly happening in a month's time frame. As always, get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA or get at me at GameFace Lee, the show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline, available on all the major platforms. You know where to find us and you know what to do. If you listen to podcasts, look for the Baseline NBA podcast. Add us to your playlist and allow us to be your go-to resource discussing all things that are happening in the association. You know how we do. You know how we roll. Let's get it started with the breakdown.
Time to break it down.
This is The Breakdown. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, the Baseline NBA podcast. And with us to really get right into the meat and potatoes of what it's all about for eager NBA fans to maybe and hopefully at some point finally see the restart of this NBA season come to fruition. We have really one of the premier writers who has done such an excellent job of breaking down the NBA and keeping us in tune here, especially in our social media community, with the happenings that are going on. If you haven't seen his work, you can always catch him on Sports Illustrated, SI.com. Our man, Sam Amico. Sam, thanks for hopping on board with us, to kind of help us placate where we really need to be in a month's time frame should everything happen with the NBA season possibly restarting.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And it seems like the majority of players want to play. Obviously, the team owners, the board of governors wants to continue the season. Adam Silver wants to continue the season, and everything is in place for them to tip off at the end of July at Walt Disney World near Orlando. And, right now, so far, it's full steam ahead. They have the calendar, not just for, the regular season or seeding games, as they're calling them, but the playoffs, the finals, and a lot of off-season activity. We have a pretty good idea when that's going to be held, like the draft and lottery and free agency and all that stuff. So, right now it seems like it's full steam ahead, barring any unforeseen, circumstances with COVID or any social justice reform. We heard about that over the weekend. Guys talking about sitting out. So, but right now I think it looks like it's pretty much going to happen. The NBA will resume the season.
I want to put you on the spot real quick, Sam, because my co-host, Shaw knows how I feel about this. I'm of the mindset that I'm not all that particularly fond of the idea that this intent for the NBA to restart, this push for this restart, needs to happen while so much is going on right now with the country, and there's so much focus and attention on a lot of issues that, while it's not specifically sports related, it's impacting the athletes, the players, and their cause to be involved in these issues that are going on. And I sometimes feel like, as the NBA has always been ahead of the curve when it comes to getting out in front of messaging, and the way it looks at its players and how they use the players to help elevate themselves on being the right side of certain decisions and issues and things of that nature, this push. And I'm not saying that they're forcing it, but the idea that everything is being talked about, saying, hey, we need the NBA because we need a distraction and things of that nature. Do you worry sometimes that even the best intentions for players to try and move ahead on doing this, it could also stymie their ability to go out there and play at the level that they want to play because of the distraction that is that some of these players are actually out here focused on something that's not really related to basketball?
Sure. I don't think there's any question. And, just you mentioned that the country is where it is, and that's true, but let's just say it's a regular type of basketball season with playoffs and all that, and none of this happened. There's still enough distractions for the players to most of them are in their 20s and early 30s, and real life can get in the way sometimes and can serve as a distraction. So, whether that be issue at home, and not even a bad issue. Maybe you have a newborn, or maybe you just got married, that can serve as distractions as well. So, but that's, those things are to be expected. But your point here is, yes, sure, there are going to be other things on people's minds. I mean, it's almost like, hey, the coronavirus is one thing, right? I mean, they were already worried about that, the players and the owners, and everybody's been worried about that. And then, all the other things that have gone on in our country just in the last, 2 or 3 weeks, those are important issues that weigh on your mind. And yeah, sports does serve as a diversion, but maybe, if the players, and I can't speak for the players, but it's clear that some of them, this is really weighing on their mind and in their hearts, and that's a tough thing to play through sometimes. And you don't want to force it if you're the NBA. Maybe you reevaluate if you're Adam Silver and some of the star players and the players who are saying, let's play and use our increased exposure, use that as a larger platform. There are some players certainly in that camp. So I really think, look, when they've had all these talks, right, they've already had all these conversations about whether or not to play with. Adam Silver's held them with a board of governors. He's held them with coaches. He's held them with GMs. He's held them with the players' representatives. I personally think that right now is a good time to revisit all of those conversations and decide from there. Give the players an opportunity to gather and obviously via Zoom or whatever, give them an opportunity to revisit everything. I just think a lot has changed since they've made the decision to play, which was
right, which is just like a week ago.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. It's not like it was that long
we haven't
ago.
even gotten out of the second week of June. This is at the beginning of June that they made this decision with the governors. And then, like, all of a sudden, everything has exploded like wildfire.
Yeah, and I think because of that, this is probably, it's probably necessary to revisit everything you just did and said, hey, are we going to push? The good news is if you do decide to go ahead with this, and play, everything's already in place. But it's just as easy to say if everybody decides it's not a great idea to do it right now, then you say, you know what? Okay, here's how it's going to happen. It's going to hit our pocketbooks big time, which is, that's okay if that's the decision you come to. And you say, we're just going to cancel it, and hopefully we'll all be in a better place come October, November, and we'll just restart at that point, start the 2021 season, and this one's a wash, and that's okay if that's the decision you make, and nobody should be judged for that. I wouldn't think anyway.
Well, not unless you're in Lakers.
Yeah.
Not unless you're a Lakers fan. Right. Because seriously, there will be an uprising.
Yeah,
so, that will be up in arms.
Right.
So yeah, I just what is your thought process on this whole situation in terms of the reporting of it, the league? Because it's interesting now. I think you're 100% correct. Whereas, hey, well, it was announced, and if they need to walk it back, no problem. But do you think there was anything that maybe the league was maybe being a little bit insensitive and too concerned about their pocketbook, so to speak, by kind of pushing forward with this? And even now, it's stated that the NBAPA was not necessarily fully on board, and not all representatives were consulted in the decision-making process on some of this. Do you think the league and media was maybe a little bit overzealous in reporting that the season was going to restart on July 30th?
Well, I think there was a lot of excitement. When let's say we're just dealing with the coronavirus strictly as we were when all these decisions were being made. I think that there was an excitement that, hey, we feel confident in this whole quote unquote bubble situation and getting to play there. There's always, and when there's excitement and emotion involved, there's always going to be a little bit of overzealousness. I think that that's human nature to say, you know what, hey, we're going to have some basketball. And I think everybody was excited about that, at least the majority of players. And, then with the George Floyd incident and the protests, the country kind of is on a different. There's something else that's very much very important and needs to be brought to our attention. And at the time when all these decisions were being made by the NBA, that wasn't necessarily at the forefront, obviously. But like you said, that switched quickly. And, I don't know if at the time it was reported that it was overzealous, but I certainly think now, if you just say, you know what, we're pushing ahead no matter what, that's probably the wrong way to approach things. You probably need to approach things by saying, we have some, there needs to be further discussion here and conversation, and let's put it on pause for a minute and have those conversations. And we're from the Players Association, it's very clear we're hearing some guys, again, I've said this already, but some guys very clearly don't want to play, and some guys very clearly still do. So I think that needs to be worked out, and the players have to come to that discussion. And I think Adam Silver needs to get involved in those discussions too, and not as a guy who's talking, but as a guy who's listening. And that's just the way it is. Could it have been a little overzealous reporting wise? Yeah, sure. Again, it's just I think that the fans and the league and everybody who has followed the league was very excited about the possibility. Like you said, Lakers fans, I'm sure there are plenty of Bucks fans who want all this resolved because, these are the top two teams of the league. Clippers fans, those fans of those teams and players on those teams very much would for the most part, I think would like to move forward.
One thing to add about what you were saying, Sam, because you bring up really some excellent points, especially from the media perspective, which obviously, the idea is that media always needs to be objective and really never be subjective about things when reporting. But, one of the things that's interesting is that all of the major sports leagues were pretty much in a standstill. And the NBA was the only league thus far that seemed to actually look like and act like they were trying to move forward. Not one side or against the other side. Like, there was definitely confirmation that NBA players wanted to play. There was definite confirmation that NBA owners wanted to play, and there was definitely an enthusiastic commissioner who recognized that everybody does want to see the NBA figure out a way to move forward if it is possible. So I think when you see like MLB still stuck in its tracks, when you see that the NFL can't seem to get its act together, and they don't even have a season yet, but just the way that they are wavering with the way that they do things and how they interact with their own players and things of that nature, everybody I think was licking at their chops, saying, oh my God, the NBA seems to be the closest of the major sports leagues, and probably maybe even the NHL, probably like, not too far behind. But the NBA seems like the one sports league like we can actually feel with some confidence that we may get some kind of live sports, of the big ones to take place before the summer's end.
Yeah, there was a lot of praise for that because of what you just said. It was the commissioner, the board of governors, the Players Association, all really were pushing this like, hey, let's do this. It's going to be, if we feel safe, and these are the steps we need to take to feel safe and play, then let's do it. And they have, they have the arenas, the gyms, I guess I should say, at Walt Disney World with the hotels there to, keep the players and coaches in kind of that bubble, centralized location. Everything had come together. Then, we got wind and we heard of these calls led by Kyrie Irving. I guess it was just one call, but sounds like it lasted a few hours with some players who were now there were players on that call who are still saying, I still want to play, but there were, important voices, big voices of Kyrie Irving, Dwight Howard, who, of course, is a key member, key reserve for the Los Angeles Lakers, who are saying, not so fast. Now there are other things that need to be considered. And, those players certainly shouldn't be vilified for their convictions. I don't understand, the anger towards somebody who feels a certain way. That's not wrong. It's how they feel. And I think that needs to be considered. And maybe there are other players who feel the same way, who haven't had the opportunity to speak on the subject yet, or to have the subject revisited of playing. So, and I really think that's, what Kyrie Irving's call was about. It wasn't like, let's cancel everything. It was, should we? And are there guys who are upset about this enough that we should cancel the season? Not even necessarily upset, but want to use this time off or time away from the game to use their platforms and whether it's to protest. But I mean, look, we all know professional athletes have some very well-respected voices, and maybe this is a time for them to be heard instead of playing basketball. That's not to say you can't play basketball and use that platform. I'm just saying this is another way to look at it, and maybe this approach is healthier for the players. And that's something that they're going to use this time, I'm sure, to decide. So, but going back to what you were saying, I mean, the NBA was looking good, and it still is. This isn't wrong, but it's just well, maybe they're not going to play now. Which we were all pretty sure they were. So that did change quickly.
So Sam, I want to ask, as you brought up Kyrie there in general, and just kind of touch on this. I mean, you did a little bit, but just why do you think he specifically is getting so much vitriol for the conversation that he's doing as part of his job? I know the short answer is because it's Kyrie and, the troubles he's had, in the past, but is it really just people they just want their basketball back and they don't want a quote unquote agitator or somebody like that to get in the way of that situation? But why do you think he's just getting so much hate, for what he's trying to do?
Yeah, I think partially is because it is Kyrie, but I think partially is, you could have had, say, for instance, Paul George leading that call, and he would have taken the same amount of grief. And it's for the very reason you said. It's because, fans were way up on cloud 9 and, they've been dropped down to like cloud 3. And anytime that happens, they're going to, be upset. And I don't know. The funny thing is, and I don't get the sense that most of the players are upset about that call. Even the ones who want to play, I think that they're, hey, let's think this through now. This is something he's brought up that's very important. I don't think the majority of them are upset. I think most of them are saying, I still want to play. How can we play and continue to have our voices heard? Can we do that? And is that the right way to go? I don't think any of the players. I don't think the team owners, and I don't think Adam Silver. I don't think anybody who put the plan together to say, hey, we're going to play. I don't think anybody's upset with this call or with Kyrie Irving. I think that's a fan thing. And look, fans are an emotional bunch. Fan is short for fanatic, right? So, I mean, they really want a season. They really want basketball, and but I will excuse some fans because some of them are young, and maybe things aren't more important to them than sports. Which this is a good learning experience, I guess, for all the negativity surrounding it. There are certainly things that are more important than basketball. And as much as I'll tell you what, I mean, guys, I've been a basketball junkie my entire life, and I have wanted to see this from a fan standpoint. Forget that I'm in the media. From a fan standpoint, I was excited and thought it would be kind of cool, assuming, again, everything is safe, that these guys are playing in front of no fans, and they're all, playing on neutral courts. It's almost like the NCAA tournament in the NBA. And I've been very excited about it. I thought it would be at the time of, when we were just dealing with COVID-19, the country was sad. And I think that this was something that was going to uplift us all. And I still think that can be the case. But I also think now, obviously, there's more than just COVID. There are larger issues. And again, it's not for me to say, yeah, they should play or no, they shouldn't. But I think as an adult and somebody who understands what can happen in this country and the terrible negative things that can happen, and I think it's as an adult sports fan, it's to say, if these guys and the players and the owners and everybody isn't totally all in on this, then maybe they shouldn't do it. In fact, they shouldn't do it if they're not all in. You want it to be something to uplift each other and uplift their fans and be good for, the sports community. You don't want it to be something where, and you used a great word earlier, where it's forced. That's not good. That's not good in any area of life, but especially this one, it wouldn't serve anybody well, I don't think.
So you made a great point, in that soliloquy there, and I needed to just kind of follow up with the NBA's role specifically. The league itself, and I'm not trying to, you're not the league executive or official or the case may be, but there just seems to be this clamoring for information about the NBA specifically and whether they should come back or whether they shouldn't. I'm just not seeing that happening in other sports. So you work for Sports Illustrated, you have your own website, Amico Hoops as well too. But what is the situation? Why is the NBA kind of the one that's put on the spotlight when it comes to the national sports leagues that are out there as the one that is people are having the most debate about whether it returns or not? I don't see these conversations with soccer, MLS, NHL, and maybe I'm just not that close to them, so to speak. But it just seems like the NBA is like the one that's really kind of in peril one way or the other, and everybody else is going back no matter what.
Yeah, I think part of that is one of the things about the NBA that I will say is it's kind of been a trendsetter in recent years. You know, the league was the first one to stop play on March 11th with the whole Rudy Gobert situation when he became the first known player to test positive. They just said, we're shutting it down. This is the right decision. And, you know, I think the NBA has a large social media presence, particularly on Twitter, but everywhere. I know, I'm sure it's because it's true. We're more intertwined in the NBA, but the NBA has a reputation, even among other sports leagues, of kind of being a trendsetter when it comes to those things. And a lot of people just flat out find the NBA really cool. You know, I mean, I know my kids, I have 3 boys, and they like all sports, but the NBA to them is like where it's at. It's style. It's, you know, it's got sizzle. And I can just tell they think it's the coolest, you know? So maybe they like football more, but the NBA has that kind of coolness to it. And I think that's something that their fan base is, you know, very focused on the NBA kind of being that trend-setting type of, you know, whatever the NBA does is going to be the right thing because they've gotten it right for so long. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I think that's how they're viewed. And so I think that's a lot where a lot of the attention comes in. And plus, again, because they seem so close and still do seem fairly close to coming back to play, I think, again, that level of excitement kind of got everybody to the point where, you know, here's a league that we really care about that can finish its season, and now we're all ready to go. And then all of a sudden, you know, kind of what you would call a blow to fans, these reports over the weekend, not all fans, but some fans were disappointed, like, well, maybe it's not going to happen. So I can't take sides here. I just look at it like it's if it comes back, that means everybody's agreed on it. That's the right thing to do. And if it doesn't, then you know it's not the right thing to do. And we need to heal and make improvements as a nation first. And that is the priority. And guess what? I think that we would all be okay with that too.
Sam Amico joining us here on the Baseline NBA podcast, writer for SI.com, but more importantly, he also has, and he is the founder of Amico Hoops, which also just covers a wide swath when we talk about basketball. And of course, because you are a basketball junkie, Sam. So I want you to give us our fix, you know, as we transition to what obviously is where we're at right at this moment in time, which is in a waiting space. If everything was to go as planned, 22 teams will be invited, you know, into one central location, and you know, all eyes seem to be saying that it's supposed to be, you know, Orlando, Florida, at the Walt Disney World Sports Complex. What are your thoughts about this particular format? I have already seen where, you know, a lot of people are not completely fond of it because obviously the number of teams that have been invited, aside from the top 16 teams from in the NBA, the remaining 6 is just like, you know, it's really just all Western Conference laden basketball teams, which, because you know, reflexively, those teams are the ones that seem to be within striking distance of each other to claim the 8th seed in the Western Conference. But what are your thoughts about that? Because, you know, people have said it's like, oh my God, this is just another Western Conference play-in tournament. It's, you know, and again, it nullifies or it makes the Eastern Conference irrelevant, or just, you know, signals the weakness of that conference because there is only one team there that you know is going to be trying to compete for that 8th seed. I just wanted to get your perspective on that decision and how much energy is behind the idea of that format?
Well, I think that they, on a personal level, I would have liked to have seen them just seed them 1 through 16, invite those other 6 teams, but lose the East and West and have them, with Washington included from the Eastern Conference, have the rest kind of battle it out for seeds, say 15 and 16 or something along those lines.
Why do you, I'm sorry, Sam, but why is it such a struggle? Like, and everyone has been saying this, if there was ever a time for the NBA to start venturing into the quote unquote experimentation process, you couldn't find a better test case than what you're trying to do with finishing the rest of this season. And the way that the NBA has been set up over the last few years with the rules that they've been doing, over the last decade. I mean, it's almost nullified the significance of Eastern and Western conferences. So does it surprise you that they just didn't go all in with really trying to format this thing in the way that I think everybody is saying that this should have been the case for years now?
Yeah. Was it a surprise? No. And I'll tell you why it didn't happen is because the Eastern Conference, owners and general managers didn't want to do it that way. They don't want to have to go through, the Western Conference to get to the finals. And I think, frankly, at the end, the NBA decided, which is kind of a shame if you ask me, well, we don't want a Lakers-Clippers finals, then that would just seem weird. And to me, it's like, no, I think that'd be great. If they're the 2 best teams, play it out. Who cares if they're in the same conference, right? So
Right.
I thought that this would be it's funny that you mentioned that because they are experimenting quite a bit, obviously, with this seeding, the seeding games and the kind of the play-in tournament type of deal. And you think they would just go all the way and seed them 1 through 16, but I really think that the fans would eat that up even more if you had an Eastern Conference team playing a Western Conference team, or the Milwaukee Bucks had to play the Clippers in 7 games, say in the second round or something. I think people would love that. I don't think that would be a hindrance, but I just don't think that the plan had enough support from the Board of Governors, general managers, coaches, maybe even some players. I don't know. But for whatever reason, there wasn't enough support for that breaking up the conferences for Adam Silver to say, this is what we're doing. He's a guy who's going to listen to all the parties and take it all into account, then make the decision from there. So, unfortunately, I do think it would be cool for fans. And again, like you said, this is a perfect opportunity to do that. But either way, the teams that are at the top are going to rise to the top, regardless of how you seed them or what conference they're in.
So one of the questions I need to ask, regarding that specific statement is, do you think there is competitive advantage? A lot of people are saying for younger teams, when you put it in this situation and there's been such a long layoff, could a random team, so to speak, come out now here and be a more legitimate title contender because of the time off? A lot of people are looking at a team like Portland, if they somehow now sneak into the playoffs, and they can maybe upset some teams and things of that nature. While I know it's a little bit far-fetched, I think they could go all the way. What do you see when it comes to this format now? Who has the clear, or if anybody has a clear-cut advantage, and maybe some teams that may have a disadvantage as a result of the new setup?
I think for one, I still think the teams like the Lakers and because they're so talented, and the Bucks because they're so talented and they play so well together, and the Clippers and those teams, Houston, I still think that those teams are going to be near the top. Miami. The one thing that I think is two things that are huge X factors is there truly will be no home court advantage. You won't forget just sleeping in your own bed. Everybody's going to have that advantage, because they're going to be sleeping in those beds. Say, if this all goes through, they'll be sleeping in the same bed every night. Everybody will. And you can talk, any player will tell you, when you're staying in a hotel or staying at home, that impacts your play. It can negatively impact your play. Also, the crowd noise. You're not going to have 20,000 people standing and screaming and telling you how much they hate you if you're a visiting team. Everybody's gonna be and players will tell you, being the home team, that really helps. That you get that lift from that crowd to kind of keep pushing. You get that psychological advantage. That's gone. Okay, so there's two things. And then just playing on your home floor, a floor that you're familiar with, that advantage is gone. And that's why teams, that's what the regular season is for, is to get that advantage and to get those game sevens on your home floor. Is it always going to mean you win? No, but it does give you that little bit of an edge. Well, all of that is gone. The playing field is even. Yeah, maybe these younger teams with younger legs now, they're not intimidated because they're not playing in an opposing arena, house of horrors, and then everybody's on, and they don't get intimidated or they're not missing shots that they would normally miss on the road because they're not on the road. Both teams are home teams. So, I would not be surprised if we saw something along the lines of an upset. And guys, guess what? We see that already. Sometimes a team will come out of nowhere and get hot for a playoff series and pull off an upset. But I think the odds for that happening are going to greatly increase, and it wouldn't surprise me to see it, even though they're still going to have 7-game series. It wouldn't surprise me to see kind of a Cinderella run here if all this goes through, or the plan is the NBA sticks to the plan. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see somebody get knocked out in the first round that shouldn't, maybe get knocked out in the second. We see kind of a little Cinderella run. I think it's all set up for that, frankly.
Well, a nuanced thing too that I think, as you're bringing up these great points, Sam, is that what about scouting?
Yeah.
Right now, scouting is going to be centralized amongst these teams. There's access to seeing who their next opponent might become, if they move into the next series and stuff. And then I think repetition. It's funny. I would have loved to have seen the Golden State Warriors participate in this bubble-like type scenario, because you give me a guy who gets on the basketball court and shoots. Let's say he has a cold night game 1. Well, he's going to be continuing to play on that same court how many times through the course of this whole tournament? You can't tell me that he's not going to be familiar with the lighting, familiar with how his shot comes off. I mean, all of these things then now comes into play and accentuates. So I think an exciting element to this, if everything does shake up, which I'm really intrigued to see, are how guys make those adjustments quickly and really come out of the light. Like, they could be mediocre shooters because of the fact that they don't shoot consistently unless they're shooting on their home court. Well, now that they get to shoot basically on the same court, whether it's the same 3 or 5 or whatever, I'm willing to bet that some of these guys who are 32, 33%, shooters are going to be shooting somewhere close to 40% by the time that the series or the tournament or they get to the finals. If they're good enough in the finals, like Patrick Beverley will probably be leading the tournament in 3-point field goal percentage if things go off in that kind of manner.
It's funny that you say that, because I remember a long time ago, I was a general manager, and I can't remember who it was, said, and it's so true. I mean, this isn't anything genius. It's just you watch the games, but role players almost always play better at home. The superstars are going to play great wherever, right? 90% of the time, your best players are going to play really good, whether it's home or the road. It's the role players who seem to be impacted the most by playing on the road and don't play as well generally on the road. So to your point, right here now, again, we have no road games. And like you said, somebody who may be a role player that you would kind of expect maybe not to be so good in, say, a road game 5, won't have that hindrance of playing on the road. So, yeah, I mean, now you got me all excited because we're talking about basketball again. So, but
you're welcome.
But I think that
I told you we were going to give you your fix, Sam. I told you we were going to give you your fix.
Well, I appreciate that because I think that we all, we're all here because we loved the game from the beginning, and I think we could all use that fix if it's something that's agreed on and it's the right time to do it. But it is there. If this season goes through, honestly, guys, could you think of a more intriguing season? I mean, because it's just everybody, you're going into it, it's so wide open. Now, maybe everything goes according to plan, and maybe the Milwaukee Bucks, number one seed in the East, are playing the Los Angeles Lakers in the finals, number one seed in the West. Maybe that's what happens. But I think going into it, there's just more intrigue of what the heck's going to happen here than there probably has entering any other playoffs, at least in our lifetime. So I think that element of it is going to be really cool.
So Sam, I hate to knock you off the high, but I'm that guy. I gotta ask a couple of questions here. So outside of the potential of the season not resuming and everything like that, with whatever the players end up deciding, but just what are some troubles you see with the bubble, the fracas with the campus, or whatever terminology that I've heard kind of being thrown out there outside of, again, the players maybe not being feeling like it's the right thing to do. They've had the conversations about Disney employees and them not necessarily being restricted. And then there's the conversation about the coaches and the ageism that might be taking place with what the NBA is trying to do. Just what are your thoughts on some of those nuanced things that the league is still trying to find, try to figure out when it comes to the details of this thing?
Well, number one, what is the safest situation? And I haven't seen any of this reported, and I haven't gotten any answers myself. What, is everybody going to be shoulder to shoulder on the bench like always? Well, I guess that's okay if you've been tested, and there's going to be tests. My biggest question is, what happens if, heaven forbid, a player tests positive? We heard Michelle Roberts, the head of the Players Association, or the chief executive of the Players Association, said somebody's going to test positive. Well, then what? What if, heaven forbid, it's one of your top 5 players in the league that tests positive? What do? You send him back to his room for 2 weeks, 7 to 10 days, whatever the protocol is, and then play games? Are his teammates able to play games? I just don't know what the protocol is going to be, and I'm sure the NBA has something in place. But what happens? Do you just lose? I hate to bring up names, but let's just say LeBron James or Anthony Davis or, Giannis or one of those guys. What do you do? Do you keep playing without those players? Do you pause the season? Do you just cancel everything? Say, you know what, we had a positive test, it's over? I don't know. And I think that's a huge, huge question mark. And you have to be really confident that you're not going to get a positive test, if you're going forward with this, it would be my guess. So there just seems to be that dynamic, to me, kind of makes you concerned a little bit, makes you worry a little bit. And I think that's the biggest kind of red flag. But other than that, I think they have everything in place to play. and that's a big one.
Sam, so one of the things I think that tends to happen, what's driving this, and obviously, it's about the money, right? This is a business. I understand that there's also an entertainment factor into this thing, but there's a business element to this. There's a business model that obviously has to be sustained, especially, whatever the outcome is for this season is obviously going to have an effect for, going into possible with the draft and then going into next season. So talk a little bit about what those financial ramifications could be if we were to just cancel out this season. Is it as bad as maybe our imaginations are allowing ourselves to go wild over, Or, is the NBA really set up in a way where, you know what, we err on the side of caution. We can be okay because we're going to have these things set in place that when next season rolls around, we're ready to go. Like, where do we transition this from just being something that, okay, well, this is going to be an experiment, into feeling confident that this is the path forward, and we know that if this obviously does happen successfully, we're going to be all right, rather than feeling like, the fear is we're going to lose even more money if we don't get this right.
Yeah, the league's going to lose money either way. The salary cap's going to be impacted either way. It will be minimized considerably if they do play. There's no way around that. And not just, for everybody involved. So you're talking about the owners, the players, everything. It'll be minimized greatly. I've seen the figure $900 million is how much it would cost the league. Obviously, you'd have to pay back a lot of television revenue that you wouldn't have to pay back if you play, which is in the hundreds of millions. So there's going to be, and there's already been a great loss. Starting with the whole Daryl Morey tweet in China. That at the beginning of the season, they lost that kind of business from China. The NBA was already, none of this is dire, so let's not go there. But for the NBA, it was something where they had to kind of reconfigure, and the salary cap was destined to go down a little bit. Now it's going to go down, I would say considerably. And if you don't play, go ahead.
Yeah, Sam, isn't it interesting, though, that because you bring up an excellent point. To me, I find it that Daryl Morey's tweet, whether you find it right or wrong on the side of politics, was an irresponsible tweet that damaged a relationship with a country who, whether they may or may not be, have flattened the curve on this, if this situation continued to be where the U.S. is unable to contain this virus in any way where you can play the games here, people wouldn't be upset if the NBA had to move everything over to China just to finish out the season. But even then, still, that severed relationship, you have to go back to the drawing board and mend those wounds. So I feel like that was more damaging than this pandemic that we're dealing with right now.
It was definitely, there's, like you said, no matter how you feel about it politically, it was terrible for business. And that's kind of the danger, no matter who you are, if you're you're involved in business and you say something politically, regardless of what it is, regardless of what your stance is, you stand to offend somebody who is really helping your business. And guys, we've seen that a lot now, whether it's been Wendy's or whoever, Chipotle, whatever. We've seen it a lot. And that's kind of the danger in that. So, yeah, the timing of it probably wasn't great. I don't know if there were NBA teams over there, but they were certainly headed over there at the time to China. And that relationship is, it's not a divorce, but they're separated, and and it's tough. The NBA's got to work that out and hopefully be able at some point for the NBA to be able to get back on television and get that TV money from China. Not even TV money, but just that fan base. I remember David Stern told me once there are 350 million Americans, but there are 350 million people in China who just play basketball because there's so many people over there. So, merchandising and just the branding that China offers, that's a big chunk of change for the NBA. So, yeah, it was already hurting. And now with the pandemic, you throw that in and let's say you cancel the season. There is going to be some collective bargaining before the start of next season. Now, I don't know that it will be as intense with the if the season continues. I think we've seen today that if they don't finish the season, you can pretty much scrap the current collective bargaining agreement. It's not set to expire, I think, until the end of the 22-23 season. You could scrap that, and they're going to go back to the table. You're going to have to, because the money's it's just not going to be there. What we're all used to seeing from the NBA. So they'll have to work that out before you can start next season. And then, you run into the fear of a strike or a lockout or those things, or something that's, the misery of what's going on with baseball. There's a lot at play. There's just a lot at play. And I think from a business standpoint, that's why they want to finish the season, is let's avoid, if we can, in a safe way, let's avoid all these future hiccups. And that's the nice way to put it, a hiccup, by finishing this and really getting back to business. So, I just think it's been a rough year for everyone, but it's been a rough year for the NBA. And it did start, agree or disagree with Daryl Morey's tweet, it did start there. And anyone in the NBA will tell you that.
Final one here, Sam. Thank you so much for hanging out here with us today. And, get your thoughts on this really quick. Are there any lessons the NBA can learn from their sisters in the WNBA, who announced that they are moving forward and they're pretty much ready to go? I know over the weekend they also stated that they would stand with their brothers, if a decision was made collectively that they wouldn't play. But WNBA goes out here this week and makes a statement and puts the whole plan out there and kind of what they're due, 100% salaries, et cetera, et cetera. Is there anything the NBA can kind of maybe take from that?
Yeah, I mean, and I think, don't misunderstand, because I think the NBA is pretty unified, but that was really a very united, this is what we're doing. We'd already figured it out. It didn't get out there ahead of time. Here it is. We got our plan, and we're united. We're going to do.
And that's how you keep a secret.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
That's how you keep things on the low.
And you know what?
Fellas, take notes.
Yeah, it served them well. It did. It served them well. Now, part of that is obviously you don't have the attention. You don't have guys like Woj, who's great. This isn't a criticism, but he's chronicling, and Shams, Sharina are chronicling every little step, and that's both an advantage and disadvantage for the NBA. But for as far as the WNBA, no, it's hey, look, we've got this decision made. This is what we've discussed. We've hammered it out, and here we go. And I think that when the NBA, frankly, when we hear from the NBA again, they need to say, here we go. Whether that's we're playing or we're not playing, I think that they need to come to that conclusion. And they know that. They have to come to a conclusion here no later than the end of this week, because the time frame, if they do play, you need to get things rolling, and if you don't, then you've got to come together and decide that as well. So time is of the essence, and hopefully, for the sake of all of us, that if they decide to play, we're going to know it's that, or at least we can feel confident that they feel it's the right decision, and you can be excited about it. And if not, well, then then that's okay too. And it's just a good time to try to get things figured out now, and not just for the NBA, obviously, for all of us as a country, without trying to sound too political here, simply because if I ever do run for office, it would be NBA commissioner, in which you guys, you can help me out in that department.
Hey.
Maybe I could get your vote, but
you already have.
Good. And you would have mine.
You already got our endorsement.
But either way, I just think that, and I think we can all agree, hey, we could go for some good news. And whether that's the NBA is playing or it's not, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad news. If it's not, it's you can consider that good news too, because they're not playing because of greed. If they didn't play, it would be because of a cause. And I think that you can always get behind a person who is doing something that they feel is very important for the country and for mankind and for your fellow humans. So we're going to know more, I would assume, whether or not they play by the end of the week. And I'm assuming, guys, and I hope I'm right about this, that at some point basketball will be back, whether it's July or December. We'll eventually get to watch and cover and enjoy basketball. And when it happens, I think that it's because we feel like we're in a much better place.
Well, the good news is, like you said, Sam, basketball will be played. The great news is there's probably no better person who covers the game better than our man Sam Amico, Akron's finest. And I say that I say that with just with the touch of the ad lib, because obviously everybody is gravitating to LeBron. But if there was no LeBron James, it would have to be our man Sam Amico, founder and editor of AmicoHoops.net, which is a must bookmark on your web browser, Chrome or Safari. Also writer for SI.com. Sam, man, we so appreciate you sitting down, rapping with us. And you know what? I feel good. I know my man Shaw feels good. We feel good, not just talking about basketball, but talking with somebody as passionate as you, who covers basketball and still has your finger on the pulse with everything happening. And with that makes us feel good that basketball will be played eventually, man.
Yeah, and I appreciate you having me. You gave me way too high praise. I could probably name about 150 other Akronites way more important. But I'll tell you what, it is kind of cool how LeBron put my hometown on the map, because it was, he was born after I was, of course, and actually at the same hospital, and it was only 10-15 minutes away where he grew up. And in fact, I now live like 5 minutes from where his house is in Akron. And I tell people that, they're like, "You must be rich." And I'm like, no, there's train tracks there. I'm on one side, LeBron's on the other. You can guess which side I'm on. So, but I really appreciate coming on and look forward to, to always following you guys and seeing what you have to say. And I hope to be able to do it again sometime.
Absolutely incredible convo with Sam. And listen, he sounds like someone who really wants to be optimistic about the idea of this season happening. And I don't blame him. He even has elevated my enthusiasm about all of the possible storylines that can emanate from such a unique circumstance with regards to the continuation of this season.
Yeah, and it was important to bring somebody on with that breadth of knowledge, that level of excitement, but just even understanding of how the league, it works inside and out, what players' thoughts are as well, too. Sam is just one of the great guys out there covering the league, and, works for a premier website, has his own website in addition to that, too, has launched the careers of a couple other writers as well. So I thought it was important that we got him on. I was very excited about the content that he brought to our show, and hopefully our fans and listeners got a little bit of knowledge about this thing as well, too, bro.
Absolutely. And again, there are a lot of people that are out there that are doing great work. We're fortunate enough to get a guy like Sam on board to talk with us, about what's going on. But there's a lot of great writers that are out there, but clearly if you guys want to keep in the know, again, go to AmicoHoops.net. That is his site. He's the founder and the editor, and he writes some great pieces that covers the NBA. Once again, we'd like to thank you and yours for hopping on board with us this week on a great edition of the Baseline NBA podcast. Once again, thank you to our man Sam Amico. For the Baseline, Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. We do, and we'll catch up with you next time.